So just 3 weeks ago, this would have been considered an absolutely massive fixture in the Premier League running, but as things have actually turned out, Liverpool and Tottenham with a lot less to play for coming into this one. Of course, Liverpool's recent stumble means that they're no longer really in title contention, even if they are mathematically, and for Spurs, their similar stumble really has put them out of Champions League contention and qualifying for that top four. So, as I say, a lot less riding on this than it might have been even a few weeks ago. But I think from Liverpool's perspective, this was still an important game. Obviously, they have a much-loved manager to send off at the end of this season in Jurgen Klopp, and obviously this is his penultimate Anfield game, so important to end on a high really and end with some good wins under the belt. But also I think for Liverpool, and it's something that Virgil van Dijk mentioned actually in his programme notes, he said, we know from experience that finishing a season strongly, that momentum can always take you into the next season, and he's witnessed that. And so it was important for Liverpool to finish this season strongly, to give themselves a bit of a bounce into next season. And as they look to do that, I think they'd say it was job done today. Obviously a 4-2 win over Tottenham, which is they're a dangerous side. Even though that's their fourth consecutive defeat, they are in and around the Champions League spots deservedly. They have been a threat this season, and I think Liverpool saw at times in this game that Tottenham can be a threat if you allow them to. But I thought a really, really dominant performance really for the most part. Obviously it gets a little nervy towards the end with Spurs getting those 2 goals, but I thought up until that point, for around 75 minutes of this game, Liverpool didn't really give them a kick. And as I say, dominant is the word really from the performance. It's kind of reflected in the statistics from the game. I mean, they take 25 shots to Spurs 11, 3.22 XG generated to Spurs 1.16. But I think that reflects really how much Liverpool were in control. Obviously, they do have that little wobble to the end, and Spurs get those 2 goals, but they even see that off that late rally from Spurs and manage to see it out fairly comfortably through injury time. So, and I think what we really learned from this game today as well, it kind of underlined to me that fatigue, and I've spoken about this a lot in my videos, is that I think fatigue has been a massive factor in Liverpool's recent drop off, that stumble that they had late in the season. Obviously you had all those injuries in mid-season, and then what you had was players coming back from those injuries who weren't quite in form, or definitely weren't in the form they were prior to the injuries, and also the players who had to play all those games in between were just the fatigue of that really built up, and I thought that massively contributed to Liverpool's drop off. And I think the reason I think this game underlined to me that fatigue was the factor is that Liverpool have had a full week off in preparation for this game. Not happened for a long time for them, because they've been going on so many fronts, and they get a free week off, and then they come up against a side who, as I say, are in and around the Champions League spots, no mugs at all, and absolutely dominate them for around 75 minutes of this game. And we haven't seen Liverpool look as fluid and as good and as physically aggressive and as sharp into challenges for a few weeks now. And I think, as I say, I think that week off has been really, really important for Liverpool and showed what's possible. And I think it sort of reminds that Liverpool aren't going to be able to control how many games they have in a season, in terms of you want as many games as possible because you want to fight on 4 fronts. But I think it does underline to me really the importance of Liverpool, however they do it, getting fewer injuries next season, because it has been a story of the later Jurgen Klopp reign, hasn't it, is that seasons have been partly derailed by injuries. Liverpool have seemed to pick up an awful lot of injuries, and I think you saw the consequences of picking up all those injuries in that little stumble that they went on recently. But when they are physically fresh and they can play the best football, what a great side they've got, what a great squad they've got. And it was great to see Liverpool sort of remind of that today and show everyone that that difficult period they've been through recently, that's not a true reflection of the level. And when this side isn't, and this squad isn't completely fatigued, that there's a great football side that deserved to be in the title race up until the point they were, and deserved to go deep in competitions, and of course got a trophy on board as well. So I think Jurgen Klopp will come away from this really happy with the performance generally. Obviously won't be absolutely delighted with that final 15 minutes or so, where I thought Spurs were really aggressive and good and got themselves kind of back into the game, but I think he'll be happy with almost 90% of the performance. And as I say, a reminder that Liverpool are a very, very good side when they're not battling that fatigue, when they've not got all those injuries, or battling with the consequences of those injuries rather. So I think Jurgen Klopp will be happy, and as I say, it's his penultimate Anfield game, arguably his last big game, with it coming against a top 6 side in Tottenham, and to come away with a 4-2 win. I mean, he did seem happy at the end. He was going over, giving it the fist pumps to the Kop. So great to see Jurgen Klopp in great form, and I mentioned he was in his press conference as well prior to this game. So he's signing off in a really happy way, and only one more Anfield game to go with Jurgen Klopp. Seems weird to say it out loud, but yeah, we're closing in on the finish, and as I say, a good win now, and he'll hope he can get another good win on the road against Villa and maybe sign off with a victory over Wolves, and that would be the the perfect end to his reign, wouldn't it, from this position? Now, I'll go through the players' performances individually as usual, and I talk about start off with Alisson Becker in goal, and I thought nothing he could really do around the concession of the 2 goals. I thought, he was generally quite sharp off his line, really helped Liverpool hold the high line for a lot of the game, was really good and all that, but he wasn't particularly busy really. I mean, didn't have an awful lot to do. Liverpool did defend well, as I say, up until around the 75th minute, where it kind of fell off a little bit, but I think it says a lot that the goalkeeper wasn't really busy and then concedes 2 goals. But as I say, not to put any blame on him for those, absolutely not. Now, moving to the defence now, and talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold, and kind of a mixed performance really in some ways. I mean, I thought he was out of the world on the ball as usual. Big, his passing was a major part of Liverpool's threat in those first 75 minutes. He was just absolutely cutting Tottenham apart at times. But I think, and his defensive statistics are pretty good as well, actually. I mean, 3 out of 6 tackles won, 7 recoveries, 7 out of 13 ground duels won, which is decent as well. But I think when Spurs did have that rally towards the end, it did feel like a lot of it was coming down that side, and he couldn't really cope with Son's dribbling. I mean, he gets dribbled past twice in the game, and I thought he did struggle to get a grip of Son in those latter stages. But I think it's, we do focus in on the negatives with Trent too much sometimes, and I mean, it's not like everybody else around him was playing fantastically in those minutes where Spurs kind of got on top. I think, but it was noticeable that was the side they sometimes targeted, or targeted a lot, and that Trent didn't quite lock Son down. But I mean, you've got to admit as well that Son is a very dangerous dribbler, and I mean, shifting him out to that left hand side gave him a lot more influence on the game. So I thought it was a good change from Ange Postecoglou, but it did sort of take the shine, I guess, off some elements of Trent's performance, because I thought, very, very good on the ball as usual, but those moments he couldn't seem to lock Son down, and if he'd have won a few more of those challenges and not been dribbled past, I think Liverpool would have seen this game out a little bit more easily. But I think, I think overall you've got to say that the positives outweighed the negatives in terms of his performance, and as I say, he almost scores actually from near the halfway line when he wins the ball in that part of the pitch and goes to the shot, and it goes just over the bar. So again, that shows what he's all about, and I don't think Liverpool would have been as dominant without his passing range in those sort of first 75 minutes. So I thought a decent performance from Trent. Now, alongside him in the centre halves, I'll start with Van Dijk. I mean, he wins 3 out of 3 duels, but he's always, and I say this in every video almost, not as busy as his partner next to him, because they don't want to go near him, do they? I mean, he still gets 6 clearances and 7 out of 7 long balls completed as well, which again, those passes from the back are so important in keeping Liverpool on top and stretching the opposition defence. So 7 out of 7, really, really impressive on those. I think he will be a little bit disappointed around being so close to the ball around the second goal that Spurs score. Could he have closed it down better? Could he have nicked the ball when it comes into Richarlison? Maybe. A little bit of disappointment around that, but I thought defensively otherwise pretty solid performance, and as ever, as I always say, doesn't get to do as much as his partner, but anything he did with a fairly high level, apart from maybe around that second goal. But maybe I'm picking it apart too closely there, and it was just a well worked goal. I thought alongside him, now I always say about the defensive partner being busier, obviously in this instance it was Jarell Quansah coming in, and I think that really is a vote of confidence from the manager in terms of, to me it very much looks, they've had a week off completely. This is not a rotational pick. He looks to be above Ibrahima Konate in the pecking order at the moment. I think on the basis of his performance here, you would say it was absolutely deserved. I mean, wins 4 out of 5 ground duels, 2 out of 2 aerial duels, makes 6 passes into the final third, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Shows his composure on both sides of the ball. There's a couple of moments as well where he gets isolated one-on-one and looks so comfortable up against it. Did really, really well in a couple of situations. And I just think, what a find he is for Liverpool this season. I mean, he's absolutely going to be a big part of the first team squad, isn't he, next season? And I thought this was another huge step forward for him, and the fact he's keeping Konate out the side, by the way. Konate not in the best form of his life, but when he's on it, he's an absolutely world-class defender, and Quansah's leapt ahead of him in the pecking order. That shows, the immense potential he's got, and I think, there's a real battle on for that starting spot alongside Virgil van Dijk next season, isn't there? And it's going to be interesting to see what Arne Slot thinks about it all, because if he's watching Liverpool's games at the moment, and I'm sure he will be, he'll be wondering who this Quansah kid is, and thinking he's an absolutely mega talent, which he is. So I thought another really, really good performance from him today, and he's been almost, one of the stories of the season, hasn't he, popping into this team from nowhere and being as good as he is. So yeah, a brilliant performance from Quansah. Now finish up the defence now with the left back, which was Andy Robertson, and I really liked a lot about his performance. I mean, he gets a rare goal finishes that off well, a little tap in that I think even I could have finished off from that range. But I think his threat in general was brilliant all down that side. I thought he brought a lot of energy down the left hand side, really good link up with either Gakpo or Diaz, depending on who flew out to that side. And he created a lot of opportunity. I mean, he only goes down for one chance created, but I thought a lot of his crossing was really dangerous and put Liverpool in good positions, and he was always a threat down that side. Wins 3 out of 5 duels as well, and I actually think and he wins 2 out of 2 tackles too, so the defensive side of things really good. And I do think actually he gets subbed off for Joe Gomez, and I do think Liverpool misses energy down that side, and that's where Spurs get a little bit of encouragement when he goes off, because Joe Gomez is not quite as in the game in that moment, not quite switched on, and Robertson was playing really well. I do think they missed him when he went off, because as I say, his energy was really good. He was a big part of keeping Tottenham on the back foot, dragging the ball up the pitch as well. So I thought really, really good performance from Robertson, and I think people are talking about him a little bit like he's kind of finished at the moment, but I think he's got so much left to give. I mean, maybe Liverpool do some business this summer at left back, but I don't think it should be to push Andy Robertson out completely, because I think he's maybe not as good as he once was, and maybe not the player he once was in terms of absolutely perfect 9 out of 10 most weeks, but I still think there's a brilliant player in there, and I thought he was very, very good again today. Now move into midfield and start with the holding midfielder, Wataru Endo. Thought not a spectacular performance by any means, but I think he had a real dip in form around the same time that Liverpool did in this season. I thought he was back to being very, very steady in everything he did today. I mean, 91% passing accuracy, so that has kind of dipped in recent weeks when he's been a bit off it, but I think he looked back on it today. Thought it looked like he had the energy, he was switched on, he wasn't wasting the ball, he was using it well. 91% passing accuracy sort of shows you that. 2 out of 6 ground duels won. He always usually over 50% on that, so maybe be disappointed around that, but I thought he was a big part. Liverpool were very dominant in the centre of the park, and even though maybe he doesn't win every single one of his ground duels, he was in and around and buzzing around Spurs' midfielders constantly and forcing turnovers, and he was a big part of Liverpool being in control of that part of the pitch. So I thought a pretty steady performance from him, not unbelievable, but I thought he was, Liverpool were dominant in central midfield, and he was a starter and played a lot of the game, so you absolutely have to give him credit for that. Now alongside him, Alexis McAllister, I think he's not quite the creative powerhouse we saw in that middle part of the season, where it seemed like he was creating 5 chances every game and getting an assist, and he's so dominant for Liverpool in that period. But I think he did his job really, really well. Again, I say, Liverpool were dominant in that central part of the pitch, and I thought, McAllister only creates 1 chance, and a 76% passing accuracy is on the low side for him, but I think he wins 5 out of 6 of his ground duels, so he's in and around. He was a big part of Liverpool putting pressure on Tottenham in that part of the pitch, and he does actually only win 1 out of 4 tackles, but again, I thought him and Endo were buzzing around quite a lot, winning the ball, and if they didn't win the tackle, then the Spurs man came out of it with the ball a bit loose, and that's where Liverpool pinched it. So I thought that they worked really well in tandem today in terms of helping Liverpool dominate that central area, and I thought they both really did well in that. Now alongside them in central midfield was a bit of a surprise pick maybe in Harvey Elliott. Obviously you've got options there in Dominic Szoboszlai, you've got Ryan Gravenberch, and Jurgen Klopp hasn't really lent on Harvey Elliott as a starter an awful lot this season. He's obviously he's been so effective off the bench and has stayed there a lot of this season, but I thought it was he's been given an opportunity there. I've seen him in recent weeks played on the right hand side, and I'm not the biggest fan of him there. I spoke actually in the last video after the West Ham game that I think it closes off his options when he's not in a central position, because he's not going to sprint down the line, he's not got that electric pace, and he's obviously his only option when he's on the right wing is to cut inside onto his left foot and come in and sort of crowd things there. Whereas if you get him in a central position, he can pass the ball right, or he can move the ball right, or he can move the ball left, or he can come inside himself and use the ball in that way. And I think that's why I think he's better in that central position. And obviously he gets his start today, and wow, he could not have vindicated the manager's decision any better. I mean, for me, absolutely the man of the match. I thought he ran the show. I mean, the stats absolutely back it up. 5 chances created, 4 shots, wins 3 out of 4 ground duels, and as I say, I just love him in that central position where he can pick pockets of space, get his head up, pick those little passes. He's setting up so many chances there, he's getting shots away himself, and the goal he scores at the Kop end is an absolute dream. I mean, he beats Bentancur with a little dribble and then works the space and then just curls it in, so it's his top corner as it gets, really an absolutely wonderful goal, and he really looked like he enjoyed it. And I mean, again, he's another one who he's not started an awful lot of games this season, but very interested to see what Arne Slot thinks of him and whether he thinks he should be a starter in this team, because I just think he's come on leaps and bounds, hasn't he? He's always shown that real talent, but he's putting it all together this season, and I thought that was possibly, you could argue, his best performance yet for Liverpool, actually. And I think that maybe is a big claim, but it's against a strong opponent in Tottenham, and I thought, as I say, he was the dominant force in that central midfield area for Liverpool. So creative, so threatening, and he scores a wonderful goal as well. So yeah, just and actually I've not even credited his assist as well, which he gets in for Gakpo with a lovely dink ball to the back stick that's headed in really well. So yeah, a fantastic performance, and as I say, Harvey Elliott, man of the match for me. There's even more to come from him as well, because he's so young, and yeah, very excited to see what he can do under the new manager. Now I'll move into the forward line now, and maybe start with Mohamed Salah. Obviously a lot of controversy around him off the back of the West Ham game with the argument with Jurgen Klopp, and I thought he was very, very good today. Absolutely put that behind him. I mean, the goal he scores is a really good header. It's not an easy one, gets enough power on it to beat Vicario, and obviously that opens the scoring and sets Liverpool up to win the game. And he also takes 6 shots, 3 chances created. He's not quite got that electric pace. Well, he's still quick, but he's not quite as quick as he used to be, is he? He's not, I think, that initial pace, but I still think he's so threatening with his movement in behind. He's always on side, he's always sort of, and he just gave Emerson Royal an absolutely torrid time down there. And I like his exchanges with other players down that side. Links up really well with Harvey Elliott. They were creating triangles constantly with other players, and Trent Alexander-Arnold when he comes into that side as well. So he's not the same player in terms of that electric pace, as I say, but I think he just showed today that he can be so important. He gets a goal, 6 shots, all those chances created as well. It just, he's still a massive part for Liverpool, isn't he? And obviously there's all that decision to make around his contract and what happens this summer, but I think there's absolutely, you have to make the case that he sticks around for at least one more season, because I think you see today against elite level opposition that he's still absolutely got it, and he can still score an awful lot of goals, which he has done in the Premier League this season, and he's over seemingly that little dip he had off the back of his injury as well. So great to see that. Now move to the other flank now with Luis Diaz, and again, I've said this before, I think, about him, is with Luis Diaz, I think one of his strengths is he always seems to know what his role is in the team. When he sees that others are in sort of a shooting mood and they're going to get in those positions, he's always the one who covers off and tries to be the forward who thinks almost defensively and will always work back to cover down his side. And I thought today, again, Gakpo and Salah were really threatening, and Diaz almost took on the job of, okay, well, if they're going to get the shots away, I'm going to be the one who keeps the ball. And I mean, he completes 19 out of 19 passes there, which I think is just for a forward who tries things as well, I think is fantastic. But he kept the ball, he kept getting it up the pitch as well, which you're always used to with him. Really facilitated what Gakpo and Salah were doing. Wins 6 out of 9 ground duels, so just a really solid performance from him. Not out of this world in an attacking sense, but I thought really, as I say, solid. It was what Liverpool needed. He absolutely provided that. So I thought really good from Diaz on that front. And I'll just finish up now the starters with Cody Gakpo, and I think again, bit of a surprise maybe to seeing them in the starting 11 ahead of Darwin Núñez, who in the early part of the season would absolutely have been the number 1 starting centre forward. But I think again, Gakpo fully justified it really with his performance today. I thought, 2 shots, 2 chances created. He gets an assist for the opening goal with an absolutely delicious ball into the back post for Salah to head in. And obviously he scores a goal as well himself with a really good header at the back stick. He's challenging for that one and nods it in. And Gakpo, for me, he gets a lot of stick really, where people don't kind of sort of warm to him in the same way they do Núñez. But I just think, again, particularly under a Dutch manager, I think he's got a massive role to play. I think he's still young, he can develop further, he can, there are games that kind of pass him by, and that's something he needs to eradicate. But when he's on it, like he was on it today, I think he's an absolutely marvellous player really. He gets goals, assists, he can control the ball and get it up the pitch for Liverpool in terms of taking it into in positions when he's got a defender on his back. He's strong, he's got a great shot on him with both feet. So really like Gakpo, and I thought another big performance from him, and I think that's going to keep him in the team between now and the end of the season, which if he keeps playing like this, that will happen, and he deserves to be there. And as I say, he's still young really, so there's even more to come from him. So I thought a really good and encouraging performance from him again. Now I'll go through the substitutes, because he did actually have some interesting sort of impact on the game. So Stefan Bajcetic, great to see him back. I mean, he wins 6 out of 8 ground duels. He only wins 1 out of 4 tackles, which again, maybe that had a slight role to play in Spurs getting a little bit of momentum towards the end. And he completes 82% of his passes, which again is kind of lower, isn't it, than Wataru Endo managed. And I think that kind of shows you that you know, if you're giving the ball away in that position, it can create real threat for Spurs, and maybe that losing Endo in that position and putting Bajcetic in, who's, you know, still going to have some rustiness, isn't he? Maybe that kind of affected how things went for Liverpool. But you know, the massive thing is to get him back on the pitch, and I think he's going to be so important for Liverpool, isn't he, going forward? And just great to see that he's over his injury problems. And you know, again, another one who it's really interesting to see what the new manager thinks of him, what he thinks his role is going to be. So fascinated to see how that one works out. Now, Joe Gomez also comes onto the pitch at the same time, and I think he does switch off around the goal that allows Spurs to get back in it. That first one, he lets Brennan Johnson get in behind him, and obviously he sets up with Richarlison for a tap in. As I say, it's kind of difficult to come into a game with that intensity. Spurs are throwing all the subs on, and maybe that made things a little bit difficult for him, but he definitely does switch off around that goal, so I think he will be disappointed around that. Ryan Gravenberch again thrown into that intensity in the middle of the pitch. Did he find it a little bit difficult? 1 out of 3 ground duels won, and Spurs started to get a little bit of control in that period maybe, but it was kind of difficult, as I say, when, you know, coming into a game of that intensity, and Liverpool had been so good, you know, I think that made it kind of tricky for him. And obviously Dominic Szoboszlai is not on the pitch for an awful lot of time, so not a lot to say about him. You know, a couple of good moments where he breaks forward, and interesting that he's got a little battle on his hands between now and the end of the season to maybe push Harvey Elliott out that role. Interesting to see what the manager does with that. And I want to finish up the subs by talking about Darwin Núñez, and I thought, you know, you have to admit really a kind of a tricky moment for him when he comes on. Obviously Gakpo's playing well, he's got his starting spot off Núñez, and Núñez comes on and doesn't really, for me, do himself any favours. I mean, he misses a chance to set Salah up for a 1v1 when he just doesn't make the pass when he really should. It's a moment he should do better on. You know, it's a simple one really. I know he's got a defender covering, but to hit him with the ball, got to put a bit more quality on that. And I mean, he completes 0 out of 3 passes, and so really poor statistically. He also misses a huge chance at the end where he gets in one-on-one. You know, his option there is he's one-on-one with Vicario, and he tries to pick the corner but just hits it the goalkeeper. And you know, when you've got that much space and the keeper's running out, just take it round him. You know, I think, you know, it's easy for me to say in this position when I'm sat up here in the press box, but I think that, you know, he's got to have more composure in situations like that, and the ability to round the keeper. And I still think, you know, he's such a puzzle for the new manager to solve. You know, can he get more out of him? It's going to be really tricky, I think, because I think his confidence has taken a hit recently, but when he's on it, he's such a threat, we know that, but it's just not working for him at the moment, and he's having a really kind of disappointing end to this season, you have to admit. Now, that's my summary of the game anyway, and the performances. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the performance, and you know, great to see Liverpool back to winning ways, wasn't it? And also the performance in general. Did you think that was Liverpool back to their best as well? And do you agree with my take that fatigue has been a big part of this recent stumble that they've had, and really is that the thing that's wrecked the season? And you know, what do you think should happen for the coming games? Do you think Harvey Elliott's made himself undroppable? Is Cody Gakpo in that sort of form as well? Let me know in the comments, as I say, what you thought about the performance and all those things as well, those talking points. And I will leave it there. If you can like and subscribe, obviously that's always massively helpful as well in terms of boosting the video and getting it out there. And it's a good time to get on board with the channel as well, with the summer coming and all the transfers to talk about, and I will be providing insight on that hopefully. So a lot to look forward in terms of that, even if there's not an awful lot to play for in these remaining games. So I'll leave it there, and of course, you know, Jurgen Klopp will be absolutely delighted that his team get a week off, but build up to Villa to come soon, of course, so I'll see you all for that.